We're live.
Excellent.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're honored to have Mr. Patrick with us. And I believe you're running for Illinois 16 Democratic State Central Committee. Is that right?
You got it. That's correct.
Very good. Well, we're delighted to have you join us today. And we do have some questions that have been submitted from the community. We're going to get right to it because we know time is of the essence. The first question, what actually inspired you to run for this office?
For this particular office, a couple things inspired me. We have a couple state central committee people for the 17th district here in McLean County, Pam Davidson and a state representative Maurice West, that have been such an inspiration and a help to me as the chair of the McLean County Democrats. I wanted an opportunity to kind of return that favor, right? To take what they've taught me to do what they do, but in the 16th congressional district. So that inspired me to run for this office. Another thing that inspired me was the fact that I could still be a chair of the McLean County Democrats and have this office. There are still things I want to accomplish here in McLean County, and this would allow me to do that, keep that work going while working with the other 20 counties throughout the district.
Thank you for that response. As a follow-up, what specific experiences have prepared you for this role?
I think being chair of the McLean County Democrats is probably the most vital experience that I could offer in this role. Under my leadership, we've flipped McLean County. When I first started, all of our elected offices were controlled by Republicans. And so since then, we now have a state representative, we have a state senator, we have a member of Congress that's now a Democrat. And of course, we flipped the McLean County board last year for the first time ever in history. We've built a huge coalition. We've reached out to lots of community groups, and we're really proud of that. So I kind of want to take those efforts, that knowledge and that experience, and spread it throughout the district.
All right. Patrick, another one of your constituents would like to know, what do you see as the top 3 issues facing our community right now?
Sure. Voter engagement and voter knowledge, I think, would be first and foremost. There are still many people who do not participate actively in the electoral process, especially younger folks. And so that's something I'm working really, really hard on doing. We're proud of the work we've done as a county party on campus at Illinois State University, at Illinois Wesleyan, and at Hartland Community College. But there's still a lot of folks who don't think politics has a spot for them. And so I think that's definitely a priority for me. I think expanding our coalition even further, I'm proud of the work we do in our community, but I think there's always room for improvement there. There are groups, there are organizations that we haven't really interacted with as much as I'd like to. So I think that would be a second priority. And the third priority is we need to do better at electing Democrats or progressives. We don't have a countywide official yet, and I think that's something we really need to work on, especially on the legal side of things. I'd like to see us get a progressive judge in McLean County, a progressive state's attorney. I think that's an aspect of our local government that we ought to have a bigger say in, that we ought to have more influence in, that we don't have currently.
Yeah, and speaking of roadmaps and making sure you're making changes, how would you actually measure success?
That's a really good question. The easy way to say is how many Democrats do we have elected, right? But I think it also, again, in this job that I'm running for, in my job as chair, I think voter turnout. Increasing voter turnout, voter participation would be big. In this upcoming primary elections, for instance, average voter turnout is very, very low. So I'm going to be watching that closely. I know I've been working very hard at engaging potential voters and trying to encourage them to come out and vote. So that's going to be, I think, a real good benchmark for me to see how well we're doing.
Now, are you in favor of raising, lowering, or maintaining the current tax rate, and why?
I would not be in favor of raising it. Lowering it is almost impossible. And it's awful hard to take away. When you've given governments and segments of governments a certain amount of tax revenue, it's awful hard to take that away. Now that would force them to cut back on some services that they've already promised people. So I guess my answer to that would be as much as we can to maintain the current tax rate.
Okay. Let's talk about housing affordability. How will you address housing affordability?
Well, there's a couple ways of doing it. I think you have to create a business environment that encourages construction companies and potential investors, make it as easy as possible for them to do their work, to build housing, and to do it as inexpensively as possible. I think our current housing problem in part is because the housing that's being built is so high priced that many people can't afford it. I spoke with the college Democrats at Illinois State University and mentioned I was going to see the governor the next day, and I said, instead of me lecturing you about what I think things ought to happen, you tell me what message can I pass along to our governor and our state government. And they mentioned that for the first time that they didn't think they were ever going to be able to afford a house. Now that was heartbreaking to me, to see a young student just kind of try and face that fact that I may never own a home. And especially when you consider the historical importance of being a landowner, of being a property owner, and what that's meant throughout our history, to see an entire generation kind of face the fact that that may never be a reality for them was heartbreaking to me. So this definitely has to be a big priority. But I think we have to make things easier for companies to build those houses, to build the housing. And we have to make it easier for people to buy it, to be able to afford a loan to do what they need to do to get into those homes.
I think over the last probably year or so, we've seen homelessness increase in the Bloomington-Normal area. How do you plan to address homelessness in and of itself locally?
That's a really good question. I think it requires a lot of conversations. I think it's something that no one party, no one organization, no one group can handle on their own. I think it's going to require a lot of input and a lot of contributions from the entire community. I like what they've done with the bridge project. I think that's a good first step, and it seems like it's working out pretty well in its early stages. So I think I would want to see more of that type of thing. I'm also cognizant of the fact there are some people that just don't want to be in what they would consider a restrictive environment, and that's okay too. But we need to find a way to make sure that when they need warmth, when they need food, when they need services, especially social services, especially mental health services or medical services, that we've got a way to provide that to them as well.
Thank you. Now we're going to talk about approaching policing and public safety.
Okay.
What is your philosophy associated with that? How should community members approach policing and that whole public safety aspect of it? Sure.
I think policing and public safety, again, needs to have a lot of community input. I know here in Bloomington, we have an organization that, a citizens group that does that work. I'd like to see that expanded. I'd like to see even more community involvement. I think we're very fortunate to have somebody like a Kyle Nowers, for instance, right, who does a great job of working out in the community, of making sure that he's approachable. I know when we've had some issues, even as Democrats at our headquarters in downtown Bloomington, my first call is always to somebody like Kyle Nowers, and I've had some good interactions that way. I'd like to see Kyle have more influence on our community policing. I'd like to see him be kind of our model for how that ought to work. I know lately it feels like he's been, for lack of a better word, hamstrung a little bit, and that upsets me, to be quite honest with you. And I think we need to take the opposite approach.
We have literally about 45 seconds left.
Okay.
So with this last question, how do you recommend your constituents get more involved in politics and in making change happen?
Sure. First thing you do is make sure you're registered to vote. Go vote, because if you don't vote, then it's hard to complain when something happens that you don't have any control of. You have all the control in the world. And the second thing is find a candidate or a cause that interests you, and call them up and say, I want to help. Even if you can give them 5 hours, 10 hours a week, whatever you can, make sure you go help, participate. Go to group things. McLean County Democrats have all kinds of community events, so come by, say hi, and say what you're willing to do.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Patrick, on behalf of the Bloomington-Normal NAACP branch, and of course, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Nu Psi Lambda chapter, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It was really good to see you today.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Good. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yes. Ready to switch, or are you still? Next person.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
You're up with it. You made it.
Mr. Bessler.
Can I get a mic check? Mic check.
Mic check. Mic check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
And I'm just standing over here keeping time.
Good to go.
So he's already live, so whenever you're ready.
And I'm recording, so whenever you need to.
On behalf of the Bloomington-Normal NAACP branch and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, we welcome you today. Their local branch is the Nu Psi Lambda chapter. So the constituents have prepared many questions for you. Why don't we get right into it? I want to make sure I properly identify you. William Bessler?
Yes.
Running from McLean County Board District Number 4, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Why don't we get into it and just
Yeah.
capitalize on the moment? What inspired you to run for this office?
Well, my inspiration for running for office is the same as my inspiration to do public service. My mom ran for my hometown school board when I was a kid, so I saw her dedication to service and how important community was to her. And while her campaign was ultimately unsuccessful, she continued to serve through the PTO organization and many other community groups in my hometown, and that's really always been my inspiration. So when I started to pick out a career, I wanted to go into community development. I always thought about my mom, picking that career, and even today, when I make decisions, whether it be on the county board or in my job with community development, I think about my mom and what would be beneficial to her and other working families, and that's really what carried me into public service.
Well, thank you for that. Now, what specific experiences do you have to prepare you for this role?
Yeah, so I've been in the community development field for about 10 years. So I started as a housing counselor in a nonprofit in the south side of Peoria. So I help folks build credit, I help folks buy their first home, and unfortunately, when folks were facing foreclosure, I'd help them through that process. I also did community relations with that nonprofit, so I was out and active in the community as well. I then began working for the state of Illinois as a human services caseworker with the Department of Human Services. So I'd help folks get SNAP benefits and Medicaid and other benefits that are available to them. And then I started working in local government, like I said, in community development. So doing things from housing rehabilitation to public infrastructure. I've also been active politically as well. So I was the elections chair for the McLean County Democratic Party when we took over Democratic control of the McLean County Board in 2024. And I've been active in campaigns since Barack Obama's re-election campaign in 2012.
Oh, thank you for that. Now, what do you see as the top 3 issues facing our community currently?
Well, when I've talked to voters, when I was gathering petition signatures or just out in the community, the number one thing that kept coming up was housing. So I think housing is the number one issue. Unfortunately, too many folks can't afford housing, and they're having a hard time buying their first home or just finding a rental unit to get them through whatever stage of life they're in. So I support creating a public-private partnership for an affordable housing trust. So that would be a partnership between the municipalities, Bloomington-Normal in the county, and other private companies, provide funding for that so we can actually have funding, local funding that's available for the development of affordable housing. I also think state and federal government needs to step up their housing policy. I think we need to have an expansion of the low-income housing tax credit program, and we also need a version of the low-income housing tax credit program that's specifically there for missing middle housing. So up to 120 or 150% of the area median income, and that'll help developers add more housing stuff. The second issue that I hear a lot about is energy prices. I think everybody's seen their electric bill go up, unfortunately, and there's a lot of demand on the grid. McLean County is a leader in solar and wind energy production, and I want to see McLean County continue to be a leader in solar and wind energy production and grow that. I'd rather have energy be clean, and I'd rather have energy be here in McLean County. There's a lot that goes into your electric bill, but the more energy we add into the grid in terms of supply will help lower costs. And then the third issue kind of encompasses those two issues, and everything else is cost. Everyone is really concerned about costs, from childcare to housing to their utility bills. So anything that the county can do to help reduce costs for families, whether it's through partnerships with other governments, advocacy at the state level, or programs that we can fund here locally.
Thank you for that. And so if elected, are you in favor of raising, lowering, or maintaining the current tax rates, and why?
So for McLean County, I think we have to be cognizant of where property taxes are at. I think we should do everything we can to try to tighten our belts here locally with property taxes, but at a state and federal level, there clearly needs to be an increase on taxes for the wealthiest billionaires and millionaires in our country. They haven't paid their fair share since the 80s, and it's causing dramatic disinvestment in our communities and underinvestment in our communities, and that really puts a strap on local governments. So I would support action at the General Assembly, something like a millionaire surcharge tax. That way more funding can come to localities and we can reduce property tax burden while still maintaining and expanding services.
Good. A great segue here is homelessness. Let's talk a little bit about that. How will you address homelessness and housing affordability? Talk about that, please.
So like I said, for affordable housing trust would be one of my main policy ideas. But when it comes to homelessness specifically, it's a very complex issue, but ultimately homelessness comes from a lack of affordable housing, right? So I'm really proud that the county provided funding to the bridge project with Home Sweet Home Ministries that added 50 units thereabout of housing for folks that were previously on the street. So anything type of project that we can provide capital or program funding to either maintain the bridge or do other projects similar to that to reduce street unhoused, the amount of folks that are street unhoused would be beneficial. Like I said, other expansions to tax credit programs at a federal or state level to allow for more missing middle housing and affordable housing to be developed would be a good start. And then with homelessness, I think also it's really important to continue to do street outreach. So places like Home Sweet Home Ministries, they do street outreach programs that help people that are unhoused, living on the street, get connected to resources and get connected to help. Because a lot of times when they don't know where to turn, so anything that we can do to get them information and get them the help they need, we should do.
Very good. How would you build trust between law enforcement and community members?
Well, I think it begins with engagement, right? I think law enforcement has a responsibility to be engaged in the community and be active in the community and seek the community's impact or input. I'm a big fan of community policing and making sure that law enforcement, like I said, really reaches out and takes feedback from the community seriously. I think right now the McLean County Sheriff's Department does a good job, but there's always ways to be better, so I'd be interested in hearing proposals from the community about how to increase engagement and cooperation with law enforcement.
And the community members have mentioned that mental health components and services should be a part of that. What
For
are your
sure.
thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's an important part. We have to think of law enforcement more broadly. Yes, there is the what most people would consider the traditional law enforcement that comes to mind, but there needs to be an expansion of that, whether it's mental health care services, whether it's folks going out with law enforcement to take care of folks who are experiencing a mental health crisis or anything like that. I also think de-escalation training, continuing that and expanding that for law enforcement officers helps in those situations as well.
Okay. Talking about engagement, how will you ensure that residents have a voice in decision-making, and how will you personally communicate with your constituents?
Well, I mean, I think the duty of any elected official is really to be out in the community and engaging, right? You can't expect it to all be done through social media. You can't expect people to email you. You have to be out in the community and talking to people. So from my perspective, the more conversations you have, the better informed you are as an elected official about what your constituents desire and what they need. So that would be my primary strategy, but I maintain social media presence, try to make as many events as possible, and just have conversations, because I think especially nowadays, there's a lot of things that are done digitally, but I think too many people have lost the art of conversation and just sitting down with somebody like this and just having a conversation.
Okay, and I think we have about another minute. Final question for you. What reforms would you support to increase government transparency?
Well, I think right now, for example, in our legislative priorities for McLean County, we're looking for reform to the Freedom of Information Act, because right now you have some companies and some digital media folks trying to take FOIA and use it as a profit tool for them, taking videos, and that really takes away a lot of staff time. And that's not really the intent of FOIA. The intent of FOIA is to allow citizens to be engaged in the government and request information. So I think that kind of reform to allow, staff to have more time to respond to FOIA requests from people who are actually living in the community. But I also just think that government in general should get offline a little bit and go into the community, whether it's having forums or just, again, having conversations with people, showing up to events, for whether it's staff or elected officials, and continuing a conversation with folks.
Okay, very good. Once again, on behalf of the NAACP, Bloomington-Normal branch, and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, New Psi Lambda chapter, we thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was just so much. Thank you.
That was a good job.
No, I'm not, but I've spent housing counselor, so I've been adjacent to it for most of my career. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
I'm ready. I know, it was rough. Tough to follow those.
And your wife is there. I'm here.
All right, well, don't worry, I'm not gonna go, oh, hey, how's it going? How you doing?
We have like, and it's Geoff, Tompkins.
Yes. Oh,
Right?
oh, the,
Yeah,
right.
you click it right on there.
You got the beauty filter on, right? Where you, just up here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, here comes a face for radio for you guys. Give me a mic check, give me a mic check. Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
Who are you?
I'm Geoff Tompkins, right from McLean County Board District 7.
That sounds good.
Okay.
The moderator,
Oh, here we go.
really quickly. Got it, thank you.
We're ready.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On behalf of the NAACP, Bloomington-Normal branch, and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and that's the New Psi Lambda chapter, we welcome you this morning.
Great, thank you to be here.
Yes, absolutely, and I want to make sure, Mr. Geoff Tompkins, I have that you're running for County Board District 7, is that all right?
That is right, and I'm seeking re-election.
Okay, seeking re-election. So thank you for that point of clarification. We do have lots of questions that our community members have posed, so why don't we get right to it? What inspired you to run for this office?
4 years ago, nobody wanted to run. And we had some people move into the district that really weren't familiar with the district and didn't want to do it. I've been involved locally for many years and stepped forward and prevailed, and here I am. What motivated me is I served on the Liquor Commission under Steve Stockton. I was reappointed under Terry Renner. I'm a Boca's treasurer. I'm involved with candidates and issues throughout the community, and when an opening came about that had a void in it, I wanted to step in and help. And that's why I ran. I was inspired by Rich Buchanan, Terry Renner, a lot of people that came before me showed me how being engaged in the community can help at the level county and below, where we live, where we have to pay taxes and receive the services that we pay for.
Okay. And speaking of the services that we pay for, what are the top 3 issues that our community is facing right now, maybe including services? What are your thoughts?
Affordability, especially in the area of housing and in the order of consumer goods, what we have to go to the grocery store and buy and put in our gas tank. I think prices are a huge influence on our community, and we're fortunate. We're an affluent community. relatively speaking, to those around us. But yet we all go to work, we have to make our paychecks last, and we want our garbage picked up, and we want our bulk waste picked up, and we don't want our sidewalks cracked, and that costs money. And we have to find a way to adequately allocate the resources that we have efficiently so that everyone lives well.
Okay. Now, if reelected again, how would you measure success?
I measure success by opening up your property tax bill in April and not having chest pains. I think that you measure success by allocating the resources and the precious tax money that we all contribute to make sure the sheriff's spending it right, that it's not being wasted at the county level, keeping a firm eye on expenses while providing the services that makes a community livable and fun to be in.
Okay. Well, let's talk about a subject that's maybe not so fun for some, housing affordability and addressing homelessness. How will you handle that?
Okay, I'm gonna go backwards if you don't mind. You mentioned homelessness. I am
Yes.
proud to say that I am the only Republican member of the McLean County Board that voted for the bridge shelter. And the empowerment that that's given to people that didn't have any other options, safe, comfortable housing that not only provides the shelter, but the services that go along with that, to reintegrate into the community, to find that job, and to maybe move those steps up to make themselves self-sufficient. And I was proud to vote for that. So yes, I support any initiative that helps those less fortunate.
Okay.
And the other question, please remind me.
That's okay.
I'm so passionate about that
Oh,
one.
no problem. Addressing housing affordability.
Okay.
Yes.
Housing affordability, we're just going to have to think out of the box. I grew up in a household with a father that was a city planning professor. So housing and planning was just the background of where I grew up. I'm not either of those things and don't profess to be, but I know that at one time in our country, a man was able to go to work, or a woman was able to go to work and buy a house and take care of her kids and his sons and buy them the things that they need to exist, and people can barely get by today. And when houses cost more than 20% of your income, it's just simply unaffordable. And we have to look at new materials, we have to look at new designs, we have to look at new zoning regulations, we have to look at the things that build the foundation to make housing affordable. It's one thing to have the jobs in the community, but if nobody's got a place to live, what good is it?
Yeah. Speaking of housing affordability, are you in favor of raising, lowering, or maintaining current tax rates, and why?
I am in favor of lowering, but here's the little asterisk by that, on personal residences, not on companies, not on commercial real estate, but on people's primary domicile. I think that the personal tax burden, it's heartbreaking to watch the most senior members of our community have to leave the homes that they raised their families in because they just can't afford the property taxes anymore.
Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about community approaching the policing issues, public safety issues. What do you recommend for bridging the gap between the community and public safety?
Well, ideally, there shouldn't be a gap between the community and public safety. In the Andy Griffith Show era that no longer exists, perhaps the sheriff could just walk down to the corner store and leave the town guy the keys to the jail cell to go home when he wants to. But unfortunately, crime has gotten to a point where if we don't keep crime in check, we will not have a viable community to live in. It's the foundation for everything else. You can't even have housing or families or schools or sports if you don't have a safe community. We have a good sheriff. We have a good police chief. We are blessed in our community to have trained, educated professionals. We even have a just retired U.S. Marshal. So our professionals in law enforcement in our county, I think, do a good job. I think they emphasize mental health. I think they've been putting an emphasis on de-escalation. I think community engagement. Bloomington officer has a sergeant going around in a nice truck, and I see him all over town engaging positively with young students. And I think we're doing a good job. Sure, we can do better, but that takes more money.
How will you ensure that residents in our community actually have a voice?
That is one of the other things that prompted me to run. I'll speak up. I will not sit and nod and wait and stay in my lane and wait for some help. If anyone in this county and their county board rep isn't helping them out, give me a call. I say that to everybody I talk to. I know a lot of you from around different parts of the community, and you can always call me at home. You can come by, you can knock on my door. I will be there. I'm a voice for people that may not traditionally have the time, the effort, or the desire to step forward. And I will, and I won't be quiet about it.
Tell me your thoughts about bipartisanship and building relationships and rapport with those who may be affiliated with another party.
Absolutely. As a person that has experienced both parties firsthand, when I was in college, I was president of Young Democrats at the University of Arkansas. I think we can have a lot way to go there. We need to reach across the aisle. I try to do it. You'll notice I cross lines on my personal votes all the time on the county board because you have to. I call them like I see them, and I'll get grief from both sides for that. But I try to do what is best for everybody. At the county level that I serve at, politics really doesn't have a place because we're where the rubber meets the road. My constituents in District 7 don't care who picks up the garbage or who they want for president. They want to make sure the garbage is picked up on time and our bills are paid on time. And I think we can work together and take some of the partisanship out of it. And it exists. You look at the county board, every one of you's been and watched it on TV. You got some people have to sit down at those folding card tables and other people get to sit up on the dais. You know, the city council in Bloomington all sits together as equals with equal voices. But sometimes that's lacking at the county. And I'd like to see that change.
Okay. Final question. I think we have about another 45 seconds left. How will you increase government transparency?
First step in transparency is visibility. If you can't get through a website and you can't find the link you're looking for, you're never going to get the information you need. We have taken great strides at the county level with our IT department to modernize and update. When I first was sworn into the county board, the screens behind me were all dark. And I went and I told the county administrator, why can't we at least light that up with the county logo and on that big screen put the agenda scrolling down so the public can watch? That was basic transparency, turning on the screens and turning on the agenda. So I'm big on transparency. We got it live streamed. I think there's some technical issues there that could make that look better and look more inclusive. Because right now when you watch the county board, you see the chairman and their two deputies, and you don't see that people's representative.
Okay. All righty. Well, once again, it has been a true pleasure on behalf of the NAACP, Bloomington-Normal branch, and Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We thank you for your time. That is the Nu Psi Lambda chapter. Thank you again.
All right. I probably went all there, but you know.
It's live streaming, so you're good.
On the live stream.
Thank you very much for having me. I tried to get in a Fiji plug there, but I couldn't work it in.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing it.
Right here.
Zach, you can cut. Live stream.
Oh.